Friends, the Teeth Matter website has been updated. Go to teethmatterpod.com to learn a little bit more about me, but also get access to all the things I use to make my life a little bit easier. Whether it has to do with nutrition or sleep, you can find it there at the Teeth Matter store. Go check it out. Okay, one last thing before we dive into the episode. I found out that 77% of those who listen or watch the episode don't actually follow the podcast, which means I need you to go to your Apple Podcast or your Spotify or wherever you get your podcast from and press that subscribe button. Make sure to follow so you can stay up to date with the latest releases. Thank you. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Teeth Matter. I'm your host, Ellie Halabian, DDS. And as you already know, Teeth Matter is a space where we talk about how to grow personally and professionally. And when I was thinking about bringing on my next guest, I was like, who has that perspective, right? Who's been in the seat multiple times? And I found the right person. I have Dr. Jim Arnold here with me. Dr. Jim, welcome to Teeth Matter.
Hey, thanks, Ellie. I'm so glad to be here. I appreciate the invitation.
Yeah, I mean, I just hinted that you've been in multiple seats within your career. You went from clinician to practice owner to transitioning out of dentistry, helping with acquisitions, and now you're in education. So you've definitely done a lot. So yeah. We're going to go through this whole timeline of your career, but let's start at the beginning of this timeline, the beginning of your career. How did that look like as a dentist?
Yeah, there are some people who go to dental school and they have a pretty clear vision on what they want to do when they come out. Like my dental school roommate, he had his whole career planned out before we even graduated. I was not that guy. Like I just thought, man, I just want to get a job and pay off my student loans, that sort of thing, and figure it out as I go. And it's kind of how it fell into place. I came back to my hometown, took a position that I thought would last 1 year and then I'd move on somewhere else. But I was an associate in that practice for 3 years because I saw the potential. It was very much a mom and pop practice that was really not communicating well, didn't have great systems, but had a lot of untreated teeth, a lot of teeth that needed treatment, I should say. So I stuck around. In the last year as an associate, my wife and I spent probably 90 hours a week, like literally not watching TV, but watch like every videotape, every audio tape. We went to every seminar, every conference. That became my reputation before I even bought the practice. That guy's everywhere. What is he doing? And so we learned a lot. And that first year as owners, we hit the ground running. And so all of that education along the way really paid off quickly for us.
That's incredible. And what made you decide to switch into practice ownership?
Yeah, I'd always planned on it. And it's really why I went into this particular practice, because this doctor was getting close to retirement. And, he's just a really good guy. And I knew he had a nice team and he was in a great location, nice building. And so I thought, if things work out here, if I like the vibe and we really get along well, then I would love to buy him out at some point. So, it's never a straight line. It's always a little bit of zigzagging, but ultimately we stuck with that plan. And honestly, Ellie, it couldn't have worked out any better because I had 3 years to get to know these patients and really build relationships such that when I took over, there wasn't like a mass exodus or anything. They were like, oh, hey, we know Dr. Arnold. We're so happy he's here, So that worked really well.
No, I love that. It's amazing to have that kind of, like you said, that patient rapport, have that familiar, well, I'm losing my word. I can't roll my tongue. Familiar, you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. That's how I talk after my first sip of wine. My tongue goes numb or something.
I don't have wine. I have coffee. I promise. But no, it's good to have that. And then when you took over, did you end up changing things around? Was there any change that happened, or did you keep it the same since it was working so well?
Oh boy, it's kind of funny, Ellie. I told you we spent 90 hours a week like learning all of this stuff, and we literally put together 25-page single line things that we wanted to do and change and implement. And then we took all of that, those big desk calendars where, you've got a month with 30, squares on it.
I know what you're talking about.
We literally took everything from those 25 pages and they were in 25 different systems or subjects, and we put every single one of those line items somewhere on that calendar. It was like, hey, by November 1st, we're going to have all these things done. By November 15th, we're going to have all these things done. And so basically I say all that to say that it did work out, but we made so many mistakes. I mean, it's kind of my personality. I'm full throttle on everything I do. And so we really went full throttle, and we did actually start to lose some patients because we did make so many changes so quickly. But honestly, it turned out well because most of them were the patients who it wasn't the right fit anyway, for the kind of practice that we were developing. We were just modernizing things and, creating team meetings and communication streams and all of the systems that are so necessary to be, to provide great care and great communication.
Did you have any pushback from your team?
A little bit. I kept the entire team intact. I never let anybody go. Over time, I did have a couple people decide that it wasn't the right fit for them. And they'd been with Dr. Novak for 30 years, doing things a certain way. And so I totally understood that. And, I felt good that I had a good relationship with them, and there weren't any hard feelings. It just wasn't the kind of pace that they wanted to keep up.
Right.
So.
And then what was your vision for this practice?
Initially, my vision was to pay the bills, because on day one, when I walked in the door as an owner, I had $1 million worth of debt and I had $10,000 in the bank. And we were pretty scared. I mean, we were very, very motivated to make this work. And so the initial vision was just like, okay, let's just go full steam ahead and do all the right things, and we're going to do well. And we did, and I've said this before, but we almost did too well, because I told you there was a lot of treatment that needed to be done.
Right.
Oh my God. Like, everyone was saying yes. And all of a sudden I was too busy. I was just running all day and checking 2 or 3 hygienists. And it was a lot. As a young dentist who had a lot of debt, it was nice to make really good money. But it was a pace. After a couple of years, I decided I couldn't maintain that pace for like even another 5 years, let alone 20 or 25 years. And so that's when we stopped. We kind of blew it all up to a degree and started over. And that's what really catapulted me into the career that I loved.
I have a question for you. Did that change? Like, you said you went into it with $1 million in debt, right? And $10,000 in savings. And so obviously there's a fear of not having money, right? And now you're all of a sudden, you acquire this practice, you start making tons of money, and you're like, you can kind of like breathe a little bit. Did it change your relationship with money in that quick turnaround? God, that's a great question. Nobody's ever asked me that. I think it did, actually, because, neither my wife nor I grew up, in wealthy families or anything like that. It was more money than we ever imagined making, as a couple. And it happened like right away. And so yeah, I guess it did. We didn't go really extravagant initially. We tried to be conservative, but we did build a house and some of those things. But it was nice not to be stressed about it, and we really never were. From what was that, 1999 to 2020. Like, we never had a worry about anything, because we never had a hard time making payroll or paying a bill. We always had cash, piled up in the account, and it was great. It was just it was a relief, actually, after working as hard as we did. That's amazing. That's the dream. Do you think an associate would be able to find that financial relief, or do you have to be a practice owner to achieve that?
Well, you know what? It's possible as an associate. I'll say this. Over the years, I'll get into my education story and what happened there, and then acquiring a second practice and then starting a third practice. But I had several associates that were phenomenal. I mean, they worked so well with me, and, they had a really nice lifestyle. They were working 30 hours a week. They had no responsibilities outside of the office, and they had unlimited vacation. They just got paid, based on what they produced and collected. But I mean, I don't know. Everybody has different ideas of what a lot of money is, but my associates made between $250 and $350 a year, which at the time was, a lot of money.
Right.
It's maybe not as much now as it was then, but we were all really happy working together. I do think that it's difficult to go a lot higher than that as an associate, unless you're in, just one of those huge booming practices where you go in and you're expected to, produce $1 million, overnight. Yeah. It's just, I think it's different for everybody though.
No, that's a great point. It's very fair. Like money means different things to different people. Success means different things to different people. So I completely understand that and respect that. But you said you went from burnout, your first practice, second practice, third practice. So from going from burnout to then expanding into 3 different offices, how?
Well, that wasn't even part of the plan. So when I got to that point where I was burned out, I just couldn't run that pace anymore. And I felt like it was compromising relationships because I didn't have as much time with people. And that was really important to me. It's establishing relationships, not just rapport. Mm-hmm. And so I went crazy on the CE end then with my team. We were spending between $100,000 and $200,000 a year, dragging them all over the country, 250 to, I think, close to 400 one year for about 4 or 5 years. And during that time, like our income got cut in half almost. But it was worth it because it was a gradual process this time. But over time, we did develop the kind of practice that we wanted to have, which, was really predicated on a lot of the clinical skills that I picked up during that CE period. And when I picked up great clinical skills by going through every hands-on continuum known to man, I came back, very confident and very comfortable with, full mouth rehabs and a lot of other things. And at that point, we started to market towards the ideal patient, the patients that we wanted to attract. And that made all the difference in the world, transformed the practice. And then people started coming to us, joining our team who are of that like mind. And when you have a shared vision and you have great systems and, you're a decent leader, it's crazy to see how things transformed over that time until the second practice.
So when you scaled to the second and third practice, were you still practicing as a clinician?
Yeah, I was. In fact, I was thinking about, at the time that the second practice came available for me, I was thinking about downsizing. I was thinking about just doing a little 3-chair office manager, assistant, hygienist practice and just really focusing on my passion, which was changing lives with new smiles. But right about that time, I was looking at spaces. I was also the peer review chairman for my area. One of my reviewers sent me a report, and at the end of a mediation report, at the end of her report, she said, "Jim, do you want to buy my practice?" Like, hell no. I called her and said, "Lisa, what are you talking about? Like, you got a great practice. You're young. What's going on?" She said, "I'm just burnt out. I'm just done. And I would love for you to come and take it over." And honestly, Ellie, it did take me about 5 months to make that decision. Ultimately, I couldn't say no, because I saw the potential in that one. And in terms of freedom and flexibility, I hired a third doctor. And Natalie actually spent half her time in Lisa's practice, half her time in my practice. And it was amazing because all of a sudden I had more free time. It did take a year. I mean, we grew that practice by 77% in the first year. And it took a year to kind of get a stabilized situation with the team and systems and that sort of thing. One of the things I learned, though, was that you're never going to have a carbon copy practice. Right. There's a different personality, a different everything. And that was another mistake we made. We were really trying to go for that carbon copy, and it turned out having a total personality and life of its own.
Right. That's an interesting point. You can't, even though you might have the systems to recreate an efficient practice, it might not entirely be the same just because there's different bodies moving in that practice, right? Different personalities, different backgrounds, all of that.
Absolutely. Everybody has different experiences, and you also have a different patient population and a different workflow just because of the way the office is set up.
Sure. So once you get to 3 practices, what made you decide to sell your practice?
Well, when we got the third practice, I did cut back on my clinical time a little bit and spent a little bit more time. I went through the whole, engineer to manager. And then this is the point at which I kind of became more of a leader because I had a practice manager who was amazing. I mean, she helped us build everything we built. She was just extraordinary. She still is. She's an exec with a DSO now. But when I had Angie to kind of run around and manage all 3 practices, I was able to take a step back and just start leading, with vision. And that made me very happy. At the same time, though, we had 4 kids along this path, you know, between '01 and '06. We had 4 kids and we're doing all this stuff. And Ellie, I did get a little tired, but instead of taking another step back, my wife and I both got into Ironman triathlon.
Wow.
And so, you know, again, being a man of extremes, you know, that turned into 20 hours a week of training. So that started to encroach upon my clinical time. And, yeah, so we just were kind of going through that process, and we had a couple of DSOs reach out and try to buy us out. But I was like 43. I'm like, why would I do that at 43?
I mean, you're a man of extremes. You do it all. You build this legacy. But when you step away from this, what I'm trying to say is you spent all of this time, 20 plus years, building this. It's your baby, right?
Yeah.
Or one of your babies. How do you step away without any emotional struggle? Was there any emotional struggle?
You know, Ellie, there really was. A couple years later, another group reached out, and honestly, I did 5 months of vetting them, and ultimately, they made me an offer I couldn't refuse, and that was 10 years ago. Almost, 10 years ago last month, and no, this month. And so, when I made that transition, you know, I was still practicing, but only about 6 half days a month, kind of thing, because that's the agreement we had going in. And honestly, it was surprisingly emotional. It had been pretty much, there wasn't a lot of emotion involved until literally the day before. You know, the day before it was going to be official. Yeah. And, you know, my kids were concerned about me. My daughter, my gosh, she must have been 14 at the time. Julia said, Dad, are you sure this is what you want to do? I mean, this is like who you are. You know, it's your, she didn't say it's your identity, but looking back, I mean, it was my full identity at the time. And the day before, honest to God, I broke into, I started sobbing. I got all of a sudden emotional. And the next day, you know, our first morning at the office as an associate again, the CEO was there just to give me support and everything. Damn, Ellie, if I didn't break down in front of him 5 minutes before my first patient, I was mortified. Like, are you kidding me? So it wasn't, for me, it wasn't an easy process for the first month or so. But I did some things to sort of settle into it that made it a lot better.
It sounds like you had a gradual exit.
Yeah, I did. I signed a 5-year contract, which coincided perfectly because I was 45 and I wanted to be done with clinical dentistry at 50 because I always felt like life is too short to have one career, you know, and I thought, gosh, I'm building all these relationships. I've been a student. I've been a teacher and mentor. I've owned all of these practices. I've got all these great relationships. Like, I want to parlay that into something else so that I don't have regrets, you know, when I turn 65 and, you know, never did something else. So that was sort of the plan. And I literally, on the day that our 5-year contract ended, May 4th of 2020, it was the day that we reopened after COVID, or, you know, the beginning of COVID. And that was the first day in 24 years that I didn't go into the office. Like, I never took a sick day. I never once missed a day of work, no matter what. I was there. But that day, it was the day to go back. And I was like, you know what? It's my last day. I'm not going in, you know. We did some social things later, but yeah,
that's a good way to celebrate, I guess. Yeah,
absolutely.
So what did you end up doing after that?
You know, I had a year or so where I was the chairman of the parent board at my kids' boarding school. They went to an elite boarding school kind of in north central Indiana and just an hour away. And it was one of those things where I got pushed into the role. I wasn't like looking for it, but I spent a year on the board of trustees with some incredible people, including like the CEO of Abbott Laboratories and like a whole bunch of other like billionaires and whatnot. And it was really a cool experience for me. And then I had a year where I was kind of like searching. I was still really involved with the kids. And then I had a year where I was a corporate exec with a 240 practice group.
What did that look like as a corporate exec?
It looked like 201 nights in Marriott properties and me gaining probably 30 pounds.
If you are loving what you're listening to, then I want you to know that Dr. Jim Arnold is hosting not just one, but 2 luxury dental retreats in 2026. The first one is happening on April 28th. the second one on September 8th, both of them in Dubai. And it's 5 days that are going to redefine your next decade as a dentist. If you're interested in learning more than just clinical skill, you want to learn about profit boosting systems, you want to learn about building leadership, you want to scale without burnout, or building a practice that truly aligns with your life goals, then this is the opportunity for you. It's finding a highly selective, small group of people who are focused on transformations. So if you're interested and you want to sign up, or if you want to just learn more, go to the show notes and click on the link.
I mean, honestly, it was brutal for my health and fitness because, I was going from Central into Eastern time zone every week. And so I would typically, get up and at whatever time, which is an hour earlier. So I wasn't working out. I was working 12 hours a day. I was in hotels every night, eating crappy food. So it was tough. I mean, it wasn't really what I had pictured. And
it definitely doesn't sit well with the Ironman.
Oh my God, Ellie. No, from Ironman, I think we quit that in 13. So it's been about 12 years, but I literally gained 60 pounds over that time. And you can imagine, when you're used to being an athlete, I ran track and cross country in high school and college. And then we were pretty elite triathletes in my 40s. To gain 60 pounds, it was horrible. It was like the worst thing that could have possibly happened. But
did that mean that you experienced another type of burnout?
I did. COVID was really difficult for everybody. I mean, it changed everybody's lives in ways that you can't even measure, in our society in ways that we'll never really be able to measure. But, my kids were a senior, junior, and freshman in high school. Totally uprooted them, from their lives and their plans and all that sort of thing. As a result of COVID, we suffered a very large financial setback. And between that and me being a very social human and having about 6 or 8 months where I wasn't socializing at all, it was really difficult. And to be honest, I got really depressed. I got to a point, Ellie, where I just didn't know what the heck I was going to do next. I mean, I did all of these things, but I wasn't happy and I wasn't fulfilled. And that didn't really change until last summer. Thank goodness.
Well, I'm happy you found your calling. And I think everyone goes through these waves where they're on the go. They achieve. And then when there's a period of, I guess, inactivity or stillness or boredom, maybe, then you feel like, what am I doing? I had that moment the other day. I was like, what am I doing next? What is the next thing that I have to do to level up? So I kind of understand that. But is this the same role where you were helping with acquisitions, or was this different?
What I'll say is over the past 10 years, I helped the private equity guys who bought me out 10 years ago. We're still friends. They're great, just great guys. And every promise they made, they delivered on. And so I had a lot of respect for them and how they did business and how they took care of people. And so I really helped them set up their next 3 DSOs. I mean, I helped them grow. I was one of the first ones into their first DSO. And during that time, I helped them grow to 79. And then they've opened 3 more DSOs subsequently. And I've helped them build the foundation for those a little bit too. And, sometimes it's introductions, sometimes it's being a mediator, sometimes it's on their side, sometimes. But between that and some other groups I was involved in a lot of different transactions and I made a lot of mistakes with mine. And so it's been great to kind of help other dentists make better decisions and take advantage of all the great resources out there.
You said you made mistakes in yours. So what are some red flags the dentist should look for when they're doing an acquisition deal?
Yeah. When it comes to selling, your life's work, I think it's really important to plan ahead. I think that sometimes people make these decisions very abruptly. And without a plan, you tend to get rushed and maybe you only look at one offer. Or maybe you don't have time to hire an expert, or somebody who's gone through the process. And then you end up losing your leverage. And I see that a lot with doctors who are ready to retire. They're trying to sell their practice and retire like at the same time, which as a practice owner, it's the worst thing you could possibly do because you have no leverage. You have no leverage. And so you're not going to get the same kind of offer. And, when you're feeling kind of desperate. So I think the biggest mistake is just not planning ahead and then not getting mentorship from people who have either done it as a dentist or from a broker consultant.
When you say create leverage, what does that mean?
Well, look, when I was 45, I had all the leverage in the world. I had a practice group running at 31% EBITDA, and I had no incentive really to sell. I mean, I could have continued to make twice what I was making early in my career, working 2 days a month or seeing patients 2 days a month. I could have left for 6 months and nothing would have changed. It would have just kept rolling. So there wasn't a lot of incentive for me. So I had a lot of leverage, but I didn't take advantage of that. I could have played hard to get and probably gotten a lot more money. I could have gotten, shopped around a little bit and gotten better offers. But, honestly, Ellie, at the end of the day, for me, it wasn't so much about the money. It was as much about the partners that I found as anything. But I think for most dentists out there, it's wise to, check with more than one. I mean, and let's be honest. I mean, people always play this one against this one. They're like, well, they offered me this, can you match that? And all that kind of stuff. I think a lot of times dentists give up that leverage when they want to do it quickly.
I see. So other than giving themselves the time to build up and maybe seeking out potential buyers, what else should they do to kind of tighten up their game?
Yeah, I think that you really have to take a close look at your numbers. I mean, everybody looks at production and collections. That's all that dentists ever talk about and exaggerate as a general rule. I think that that's awesome, but think about a practice doing 2 million where the dentist is taking home 100,000, and think about the practice doing 2 million where the doctor's taking home $1 million. Two completely different scenarios. You could collect all that money, but if you don't have efficient systems, if you haven't, created that profitability, then your practice isn't worth much. I mean, let's be honest. So I think that when a buyer comes along, they're buying the dentist, they want to de-risk it and keep the dentist there for as long as they can because they have all the relationships. They are buying your team, they're buying your systems, and they're buying your profitability. And so I think when you start to even think about, hey, you know what, in 5 years or 10 years, I mean, really, whenever, it's never too early to plan. And part of that planning is making sure that you keep track of your EBITDA, which is, we're not getting into earnings, we're not going to get into the acronym, but suffice it to say, it's basically profit, the profit that a buyer would be looking at. And so that's what you really need to learn. And then, tweak systems to increase that little by little over time. And then you're at a point where you've increased the value of your practice. So there will be more interested parties and you're going to get a lot better offer and then maybe have some leverage too.
Do you think a part of leverage is you deciding to stay on for a little bit longer after the transfer?
Sure. I mean, anything you can do to de-risk a deal, if you sign a 5-year contract, you might get a better offer than if you're like, hey man, I can only give you a year. You're not going to get as good an offer because it's more risky, Okay. So anything you can do to de-risk a deal for the potential buyer is going to get you probably more money and more freedom more quickly.
Interesting. All right. Well, let's move on to the next chapter of your life where you found finally something that you're really passionate about, right? Luxury dental retreats. Tell me about luxury dental retreats and how it came to life.
Yeah, I told you I kind of went through about 4 years of depression and, I was still able to show up and be gregarious and all that sort of thing. But on the inside, I wasn't happy, especially when I looked in the mirror and, all this weight gain and just, being out of breath going up the stairs and just stupid stuff that I'd never dealt with before. It was tough. And you know what? I got invited to an event in Bermuda last June. We're coming up on a year. And I met some great people. I knew a lot of people because, I've been a networker for 25 years, but I met a couple of amazing people, the two keynotes in particular, Dr. Jeff Buski, who and then Dr. Steve Rasner. And, they're both rock stars in their own ways. Steve is just super high energy guy who's built a $5 million plus solo practice and super profitable and great clinician. He's been teaching for a long time. Well, he and I hit it off immediately, and we got really close pretty quickly. And Jeff and I really hit it off. And, Jeff is doing like 4 million something on a 3-day work week by himself.
Wow.
And he's a rock star clinician. And so, man, they were both really kind of inspiring, and they had the personality that I really vibe with. And Jeff's real passion, though, is coaching dentists, because dentists for the last at least 33 years, since my first year of dental school, I got these statistics, and you've heard them, number one, substance abuse, divorce, and suicide rate of any profession. And maybe we're not number one anymore, but we're still way up there. And Jeff is really addressing that. And he's helping dentists find balance, between their, kind of body, mind, and spirit, relationships, and business, and if you get out of balance, like we all are to some degree, the more out of balance you are, the harder it is to lead a full life. And so he's developed systems and frameworks that really facilitate that process for dentists. So when I met him there, I sat down, I said, Jeff, look, man, like at least 75% of male dentists are dealing with like half of what you were dealing with 10 years ago, and he fought his way through and got to a great place. And I said, like, I want to help you spread the word. Like whatever I can do to help you get this word out, you're going to make a huge impact on the profession. And so we got really close. And about a month later, he started, he said, dude, like, let's just go. Let's fix you now. And it's been fun.
I mean, I love that. I love the connection. I love the impact. The key word here is a luxury, right? So why did you choose to structure these experiences around luxury?
Yeah, he asked some great clarifying questions and helped me change some things. And those questions led to, hey, I love educating. Hey, I love small group education. Those are always the most transformational, whether you're a teacher or a student, because you get a chance to go really deep with people, get to know them. But I also love luxury travel, and I've been doing it with my family for 25 years. And so I thought to combine those things to get people out of their comfort zone, like in another country or just in a luxury destination in the US, learning in a small group setting where it's not just a lecture kind of thing. You got like maybe 8 to 15 people max who can open up a lot more. The speakers can open up a lot more. I can open up a lot more. And it's more of a conversational sort of thing. When I've got Steve Rasner at a retreat teaching what he teaches, well, guess what? You're 5 feet away from him. And it's like, hey, wait, so in my practice, this is the situation. And by the way, if you end your education session, mastermind, whatever you want to call it, at 2:00, the conversations continue, throughout lunch, throughout dinner, whatever activities we're doing. And so I wanted to put all of those together in a nice, tight package where you can enjoy a luxury vacation while getting world-class education.
I love that. That's something that I would want to experience. Do you think it's for everyone, or is there a certain type of dentist that would really benefit from this?
I don't think anything is for anyone. I think that anybody goes would certainly gain value, but I think you got to be pretty open-minded. And I think that you've got to be somebody who is collaborative, and is willing to share your best processes and things that fast track your success, because I want all the attendees to contribute to one another in addition to us speakers also contributing. And so I think that you've got to be willing to open up and share as much as you take in.
Are the courses more about professional development and personal development, or are there some clinical courses as well?
You know what? There's a little bit of everything. There's not going to be any hands-on component for now. So anything, it's going to be conversational education. But my faculty includes Arun Garg. Dr. Arun Garg has taught over 10,000 general dentists to place implants. He's written over 20 books, and he's a rock star in the industry. Heck, he has 8 educational companies in dentistry. So, he's one. Then we've got Deborah Gray King. She is incredible in Atlanta. She has a huge boutique cosmetic practice. And so she's got a lot of know-how, a lot of knowledge. She's accredited in the AACD, for instance. Then we have Gary Takis. He is an expert at communication, at customer service, at going fee for service, and a million other things to establish great systems in your practice. And then we've got Fred Joyle, who has done everything in dentistry, from 1-800-DENTIST to the books that he's written, the most recent of which is Super Bold, where he's talking about how to be bold as a dentist and how it impacts a practice and your patients and your team and your life. And then, in Dubai, we're going to have Jeff Buski again, life balance. We've got Steve Rasner talking about how to create a high profit practice, doing the right things and building the right teams. And then we've got Elijah Desmond, who started Smiles at Sea, and he's had 7 successful exits from companies he built, talking about increasing your valuation and starting to plan for your transition. And then I've got Trent Smallwood, who's huge in cosmetic and clear aligner therapy, and Valerie Dengler, one of the best hygienists in the world, who speaks on about 10 different subjects. So there's a variety, and we're actually expanding from there.
That's incredible. It seems like you get hands-on access to all of the people who are leaders in the industry. And you not only get to learn from them, but you get to build actual personal relationships with them.
Yeah. And I think it's really important. It's something that I was very intentional about when I went on my crazy CE binge back from 01 to 05, maybe, before I started then teaching. But I think that getting mentors is super important. We all need mentors, no matter what we're doing in life, maybe in dentistry, maybe outside of dentistry, maybe both. Well, at that time, I established a list of 17 mentors, 17 specific people who I wanted to learn very specific skill sets from. And, they're all still my friends today, and I've returned the favor, mentoring them on different things sometimes. So bringing all those people together has been really, really satisfying. And it's going to be more fun as we go along and build an alumni community and all that good stuff.
And remind me, when is the Dubai retreat going to be?
August 26th through 31st.
And how does somebody sign up for this?
You know what? They can DM me through any social media platform. They can text me or they can email me. But I want to talk with everybody first. We're really curating the group of people because, you know how it is in a small group. If there's one person who just doesn't really fit, it can kind of ruin it for everybody else. So I want to have a conversation with anybody who's interested, and we'll talk through it and see what they want to get out of it and see if it's the right fit for them. And, we'll go from there.
I love that. Before I let you go, I want to ask you, what is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Best piece of advice I've ever received. Oh man, if you'd prepped me for that, I would have had something awesome. Gosh, you know what? I just remember, I know what it is. It's always be growing, always focus on personal and professional growth, because as soon as you stop growing, you start dying. And, to have the wherewithal to do that, you've got to create some kind of freedom. And that comes down to leadership and delegation and knowing that things will be well attended to in your absence, but you've always got to grow.
I love that. And so I know you mentioned the handle before, but if someone wanted to reach out to you, connect with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, on Instagram, I'm at Smiles by Arnold. And then my email is drarnold@smilesbyarnold and .com. And then I'll throw out my cell number too, 219-241-4698. I'm very responsive to texts, but text me first and we'll set up a call.
Wow, that is very generous of you.
It's all right. I'm accessible. It's good.
Dr. Arnold, it was such a pleasure talking to you. Thanks so much for being on Teeth Matter. So that's the end of our episode. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. If you did, please follow, subscribe, write a review, share it with your friends so that I know that I'm not just talking into the abyss, that the content is what you need to hear, it hits where it needs to hit, and you feel empowered. So doing all those things tells me that and makes all of this worthwhile. I hope to see you at the next episode. Cheers.